There's a dent right here. You can kind of see the dimple there, right? That's what it sounds like. No fans, huh? There's like no room back here, even with this pocket. Oh, cable managing this thing's gonna be fun. I mean, this is technically ventilated in the front. Hey, what's up everyone, Danny here. This is a gaming PC that I recently built for around $500. For this build, I made it a requirement to buy everything online and to have it shipped to me so that I wouldn't have any local market advantage living in a tech-centric city like Seattle, because I know some of you live in more remote areas where there's literally zero local deals to be found and buying online is your only option. With those conditions and that amount, I was able to squeeze in some good performance into this build, and I was able to wrap it all up in this awesome small PC case, which also has a handle. Y'all know how obsessed I am with PC cases that have handles, which are pretty uncommon already, but this one being as cheap as it was made it an even rarer gem. So yeah, let's check out this build right after this. This video is brought to you by Lustre. Yes, the same Lustre with the browser extension that helps you compare products to make the best decision given the budget you're working with. They've been working on a new tool, Lustre for Creators, which is a shopping assistant that allows me to make lists of products that I can personally recommend to you, and you can find it all in one place. Some of these lists will include products that I use in my own personal setup, PC build lists, and any other random things that I think you may be interested in. This will be updated frequently and in the description of every single video on my channel from here on out. You can see my page right now by going to the link in the description. Thanks for checking it out, and now back to the video. So I've already teased this build in a couple of streams leading up to this video. In one of the streams, I actually bought most of the parts live with the audience, and in another stream, we tested the completed build out with some different fan configurations to see how the temps could be improved. But in case you missed those or need a refresher, let's go over the specs. The processor I chose for this build is the Intel Core i3-10100F. I was able to pick this up for only $82. Buying this used saved me about 10%, but if you can't find any used and can only go new, they go for around $90, which is still a great deal. Despite being 2 generations old, this still provides a very high value proposition, particularly for budget PC builds at around the $500 price point. Starting the build off with that i3 will give you a phenomenal upgrade path to much more powerful i7s on the LGA 1200 socket. We're using the Intel stock cooler that came with it. The 10100F is only 65 watt TDP, so it's easy to keep cool, and this helps keep the cost down. The motherboard I paired with the 10100F is the Gigabyte B460M DS3H AC. I got this refurbished from Newegg, and it was $61 with free shipping. With an overall budget this low, I'm not going to be too picky when it comes to motherboard. As long as it fulfills its main duty, which is to connect all the other components together and not hold any of them back, I'm good with it. This was just the cheapest one that I could find. This board doesn't have USB-C unfortunately, but it does have onboard Wi-Fi, which is pretty convenient, and there is a decently sized heatsink present on the VRMs. For the graphics card, I went with the EVGA GTX 970 Gaming ACX 2.0 Plus. I picked this up on Facebook Marketplace for $160 plus $11 shipping. I actually recorded the entire process of finding this card in a previous video, so check that out if you want to know what it's like to try to find a graphics card in today's market. Based on what I've been seeing, this is one of the best cards that you can get for $200 or less without needing any super lucky deals. And it does offer a good 1080p gaming experience for the overall system budget that we're working with. For system memory, I went with 16GB of Team Group Vulkan Z for $51. This kit is 3200MHz CL16 and is a pretty standard price for plain looking memory that doesn't have RGB. Note that the 10100F only supports up to 2666 MHz, but those kits weren't any cheaper, so I got the 3200 MHz one, which will be useful should the system be upgraded to a 10th gen i7, which supports up to 2933 MHz. I went with the 500GB Western Digital SN550 NVMe SSD for storage. This drive doesn't have DRAM, but for $43, I don't really expect it to. It does, however, have SLC caching and host memory buffer to compensate. There's this belief that SSDs without DRAM are just automatically bad, but that's not really the case at all. NVMe SSDs are not as reliant on DRAM as SATA SSDs were, which is where I think the mindset originated from. For the power supply, I grabbed an open box Corsair CX650 on Amazon for $45. Being semi-modular, this is going to be really nice because we can exclude cables that aren't going to be needed. The case we're working in is pretty limited on space. I was actually trying to go for an EVGA B-Stock 600 watt unit for $20, but none of those popped up in the time span that I was hunting for these parts, so I just stuck with a good old CX650, which is a pretty high quality unit considering the price. And last but not least, my personal favorite part of the build, the case. This is the case I bought on Newegg when it was $30 with free shipping. It's since been out of stock and I have no idea if it'll ever come back. It doesn't really have a name. On Newegg, the brand is HSCCGI, but on the box itself, the branding says Tacular, which I've never heard of before, and I'm not sure if it has any model name. And on the Newegg page, it just says Micro ATX Mini Tower Computer Case, Front I/O, and 1x USB 3.0, 2x USB 2.0. At $30, it's the epitome of what you'd expect out of a bargain bin case. There's no included fans, which even surprised me a little bit, because usually these types of cases at the very least come with a tiny exhaust fan, but nope, not this one. It's made with really thin sheet metal, so it dents easily. It actually came with a slight dent on the side panel right out of the box. One of the side panels uses those really cheap plastic wrap thumb screws, and the other side panel doesn't even have thumb screws. You need a screwdriver to get that open, it just has regular screws. The PCIe breakaway covers were bent out of the box. The power supply is top mounted. There's zero room for cable management behind the motherboard tray. It relies on the pocketed side panel to give you space to run your cables along the back, and the front panel airflow isn't the greatest. So that was a pretty long list of cons. What are the pros, you might be asking? Well, one, it was cheap. $30, that's kind of as cheap as cases get, really, without any sales or anything. It has a pretty small footprint as well as volume. As a micro ATX case, I think it feels more like the size of an ITX case, really. And it has this nice beefy handle. Kind of beefy anyways. It's not completely solid. You can see the injection molded cavity on the back. But it's still pretty sturdy. And of course, it holds all the PC parts and has the power button, which is, you know, for the most part, the main roles of what a case is supposed to do. But on a more serious note though, there are plenty of cheap cases out there that you can go with when building a PC. I chose this one based on my own preferences and the goal of making this more fun for me. You choose wherever suits you best. Here's the build summary and price breakdown, which comes in at under $500. This includes all shipping costs, but is before tax, since tax rates is going to be different for everyone. For me in Washington, it's 10%. So with that, the build overall came out to $532. I also want to highlight that I bought all these parts within a span of only a few days, showing that it wasn't extremely difficult to do, and if anything, you can save more money if you are patient and give yourself more time to try to catch some luckier deals than I did. Building in this case was like building in pretty much every other bargain bin budget case out there. It was a pain. There's barely any room to work in, the parts were constantly banging on the walls trying to get everything to fit, and you may have to remove the power supply and motherboard a couple of times if you don't plan ahead for all the cable routing. Like, look at the clearance from the bottom of the motherboard to the bottom of the case. There is no clearance. If you don't pre-route the USB and AC audio cables ahead of time, you're going to be taking out the motherboard when it comes time to get those plugged in, which is what I had to do. But if you can manage to get through all of that, then you'll have this majestic budget PC to carry you into victory. As far as overclocks go, the 10100F is running at the stock clocks since it's a locked processor and a non-Z motherboard. The RAM has the 3200MHz XMP loaded, but is only running at 2666 MHz. And the GTX 970 was able to be pushed 200 MHz on the core and 500 MHz on the memory. Everything was tested at 1080p as that's the intended resolution for something in this price range. You shouldn't have really much higher expectations than that in terms of resolution. But yeah, sit back, relax, and enjoy the benchmarks. So there you have it. This build was a lot of fun to put together and plan out, and I think the performance that it brings to the table, considering how much it costs, would still be sought out by a lot of people. It's by no means a new high-end system, or even a mid-range system at that. It would probably be placed somewhere between like an entry-level and a mid-range modern-day system, considering how old the graphics card is. But you have to consider how many people out there either have no PC at all, or they only have like a PC that they may be sharing with their family members, and it has like integrated graphics in it, and not the passable kind of integrated graphics either, like from the latest Ryzen APUs. Those are actually pretty awesome. I'm talking about like older Intel HD graphics. That's a little rough. Be sure to sound off in the comments if a build like this would be a huge upgrade for you. Hope you all enjoyed and either found this useful or entertaining in one way or another. Let me know your thoughts on the build, as well as any other questions you may have down in the comments below, so that either myself or another helpful member of the community can try to help answer. Don't be afraid to ask even the most basic of questions down in the comments. We all have to start somewhere, and I truly believe that there's no dumb questions. Just be sure to ask it with as much specifics and details as to what's unclear to you, so that whoever answers can help try to fill in the gaps. If you just ask very vague questions without giving more details, then it's going to be really hard to answer without writing out complete walls of text. So try to be more specific if you do have questions. Other than that though, I want to thank you all as always for watching. I want to give a huge thanks to the channel members for going above and beyond for their support of the channel. And yeah, I'll see you all down in the comments, as well as in the next video and or stream. Bye.